What's going on, everybody? This is Gabriel Santos, the author of Marijuana Mindfulness, the ebook. And if this is your first time seeing me, I used to smoke weed every day for about 8 years. And over time, I found myself wanting to make a change, trying to make a change, but unable to. And in that process, I felt like I was addicted to weed. I definitely felt like I was dependent on weed. Um, but in 2019, I made a major shift and I went the entire year weed free. And I can say with certainty that marijuana no longer has the same level of control, nowhere near the same level of control over my life, my thoughts, my emotions, the way it used to. And so the videos you'll find on this channel are centered around helping people make shifts in their life as it pertains to weed use. And the reason is because I just went through, tons of suffering and confusion and tried to find answers. And eventually I did for myself. And my hope is that these videos give you a similar type of support in your journey, okay? So today's video is about self-trust, following through, and weed addiction. Okay, so what I learned in my journey is that, man, there's so much, but basically, over time, when we make commitments to ourselves and we don't follow through, what happens is we slowly start to lose self-trust. Okay, it's very similar to like the story of the boy who cries wolf, where he goes to the town, he says there's a wolf, but there's no wolf. And he does this, tens, 20, hundreds of times. And it gets to a point where he's cried wolf so many times, but there's no wolf, that the people in the town, his words bear no weight to the people in the town. He's essentially a liar, right? Because he says there's a wolf, but there's been no wolf. And eventually one day there is actually a wolf, and he goes and cries to the town like he normally does, but no one believes him. And I don't remember the end of the story, if he died or whatever, but the moral of the story is he cried wolf when there wasn't a wolf, and so the people didn't trust him anymore. Okay? And so in a very similar way, in my experience, I became someone who cried, I'm done, or I'm not going to smoke today, or I'm going to commit to a 30-day break, or whatever. I cried commitment to a goal, and I didn't follow through. And what happens is, just like the boy who cried wolf, I did this so many times, over 100 times, that it got to a point where whenever I say I'm committing to something, when I'm committing to a change with weed, I don't believe myself. Okay? So let me dive into another kind of ironic piece of this. So let me go back to my journey. So let's go back to the first year where I ever smoked weed, okay? About, I had gone about 20 days straight of smoking weed. And I recognized that, this was not a problem, but I was doing it too much, too often, more than I deemed, healthy, right? Kind of like when if you drink soda every day that, oh, this is not healthy. Or when you binge watch Netflix for an entire weekend, that it's not healthy. And you feel it, there's a lack of, you just know it, right? You just know it, all right? And so back in the early stages, year one, I told myself, you know what? We've been doing this too often, Gabe. We need to take a break. Or, I told myself, I'm not going to smoke tomorrow, right? And that was the goal. But I didn't follow through. And so what happens there is I set a precedent, right? I set a standard. I set a culture in which whenever I say I'm going to take a break or I'm not going to smoke, I don't follow through, and I reward myself with smoking weed, right? And that's the irony of all this, because when you say you're not gonna smoke weed today and you do smoke weed, not only do you directly break that own promise, you break your own self-trust, but you reward yourself for not following through. You reward yourself for breaking your own self-trust by giving yourself some weed. It would be no different than if you had a dog and every time the dog bit you, you gave him if every time that dog bit you, you gave him a treat. You're training the dog to bite you. You're telling him, oh, every time you bite me, you get a treat. What do you think the dog's going to do? It's going to bite you because it wants more treats. Okay, so the irony is when we make commitments and we don't follow through and we smoke weed, we're training ourselves to say, oh, when you don't follow through, you get a reward. Right? And so what happens is over time, where you break so many promises, hundreds of promises, what happens is your self-trust goes to zero. And it gets to a point where it feels like it's basically impossible to follow through. Okay? Because at this point, not only is your own emotional, like, self-esteem around weed blown, no pun intended, like, not only is it obliterated, right? But the neural pathways, and I'm not a scientist, guys and girls, but the neural pathways around following through, rather around not following through, are supported by tons of neural pathways that say we get weed. When you don't follow through, you get weed. When you don't follow through, you get weed. And guess what? Why the hell would you follow through? Okay? And now here's here's more like practical advice. All right? Because this is not all about like the horribleness of weed. I'm just trying to share with you all what I've learned, okay? So I think the tough part, and this really is the tough part, right? When you are on that journey to try and gain your self-trust back, right? Because it's at fucking zero. Zero self-trust. Okay, when you're on this journey to gain this, self-trust back, what happens is you try and follow through, right? But there's a lack of reward because on the opposite end of the spectrum, when you follow through, there's no weed. Right? And it makes following through feel painful, right? It's like, oh my God, when I follow through, I get nothing, right? That's how the brain feels. That's how the body feels. It's like, oh my God, why the hell would I want to follow through? I get nothing. I get pain when I follow through, right? I feel you, man. God damn. Okay. So on a practical level, I would advise, every time you do follow through, you got to celebrate in some fashion, man. And whether that's something low level, like going to get some In-N-Out burger or a pizza. I know that might not be the professional, like, certified advice, but you definitely got to reward yourself somehow, man. You got to reward yourself somehow, okay? But regardless of reward, okay, keep that in the back of your mind. Regardless of reward, I must stress how important it is that you follow through so you can get some self-trust back. So you can get your self-trust back, not some of it, all of it. All right, you got to keep following through. And as you follow through, your sense of self-trust, your sense of self-certainty that when you say, I'm not going to smoke, you'll actually do it because you back it up. You're not a boy who cries wolf. You're not a boy who cries, I promise. You actually promise, you actually follow through. You gotta get that going, man. You gotta get that going, okay? And so, like I said, in the early stages, when you're first learning to trust yourself again, it is in your best interest to reward yourself somehow, not with weed, and ideally not with another substance, all right? But, watch some TV, watch your favorite show. Give yourself some time and space just to be, I know a lot of times when people make this change, they tend to want to, like, I'm going to not smoke, I'm going to work out, I'm going to XYZ, and that's a lot of change, and that's great. And if you can manage that, that's ideal. All right, but sometimes we put so much pressure on ourselves to make massive shifts all at once that we blow it because there's not enough reward at the end of so much effort. All right, and believe you me, you probably know this, it feels and it takes a lot of damn near effort to get through these first days and weeks of earning your trust back. All right, but you gotta follow through. You gotta follow through. You've accidentally trained yourself into rewarding yourself for not following through. Okay, I hope this makes sense, because every time you haven't followed through, you got a nice little prize at the end called marijuana. You got a great prize at the end. Congratulations for not following through, Gabe. Here's your weed. You know, and I don't think any of us knew that we were doing that to ourselves. All right. Okay. I hope this video found you well. I hope this made sense. I hope this impacted you in a positive way. I hope that this helped make a shift for you. I hope this helped you gain clarity, gain your self-trust back, follow through, reward yourself for following through. All right. And so last piece of advice, look, if you're trying to gain your self-trust back, follow through for a day. Don't smoke weed for a day. No weed for a day. Follow through. And then tomorrow, say, I'm going to smoke some weed. And follow through, right? You got to just stick to your commitment, man. If you're going to say you're going to smoke weed, then smoke weed. If you say you're going to not smoke weed, if you're going to be weed free, then follow fucking through. Follow fucking through. Do what you say. All right? All right, guys. I'll see you all in the next video. Peace.